Hello, welcome to the news live at 7 o'clock on FeckTV.com. I'm Chris Bennett.
I'm Alan Noonan.
Hello, Alan. First story, please.
Yes, okie dokie. We're on to Ruairi Quinn. Minister Ruairi Quinn, the Education Minister, managed to stick his foot into his mouth earlier on. He was talking about the action plan on bullying, which was released earlier on in the week, and he said that of the recent cuts in guidance counsellors, he said, if somebody trusts a teacher and something has happened, they will go to the person whom they feel most comfortable. Now, if he had just left it there, that would have been one thing, he would have been fine. But he went on to say that it could be the cleaner, it could be the maintenance man, or it could be the physical education or sports teacher. And that's where he got into trouble, because the idea that troubled teens can just simply go and talk to the cleaner about their problems, depression, suicide, and bullying is rather troubling.
Yeah, this isn't particularly, this isn't going to talk to the janitor in the Breakfast Club kind of thing. It's not the 80s. Yeah. I agree with you. He should have stopped while he was ahead there. He tended to dig a bit of a hole for himself on that one.
Yeah, exactly. And the problem is that it seemed to mar what has been a very clever government approach towards the whole problem so far. The Institute for Guidance Counsellors did slam the action plan on bullying, saying that it was a cover-up for the reduction in staff. But another statistic that was rather troubling was the 17% of people have admitted to being victims of bullying, Irish students, while 1 in 10 have admitted to carrying out in a recent survey. But overall, the government at least is acknowledging that bullying is going on and seems to be approaching the problem.
They are acknowledging the problem. It is a move forward, but let's hope, shall we say, that no more of these particularly marring comments come out.
The sort of glib
as we go along.
Comments,
today has seen the launch of graphics on smoking packages across the country, showing the dangers of smoking. These are the pictures, such as the diseased lungs, the heart conditions, for instance, that they put graphically on packages. Research has shown that these pictures do increase the intentions to quit and also increase the acceptance of what the health risks actually are. James Riley said today that he hoped the images would shock people into considering the impact that smoking would have on their lives and the lives of those around them. It's an interesting one, Alan. Obviously, these smoking pictures have been out in the UK for a while now. In terms of their actual overall impact on things, it's debatable, it's questionable. I mean, a lot of people actually, you see now stickers being put over them with pro-smoking slogans on, Humphrey Bogart did it, or smoking's cool, that kind of thing. Yeah. And a lot of people turn to slip packaging or going back to the old cigarette cases, for instance. So depending on what impact it'll have is a debatable one there.
Yeah, well, at one point, I mean, you have to think that if somebody, even if they went to the extent where they had cigarette packets literally shouting to people saying blood, 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 coming down the front of the packet, people would still smoke regardless. But on the other point, really, I think that it's a good idea to have some sort of shocking message, maybe attach some sort of shame, guilt thing to the whole thing, because we all know that the Irish people do guilt and shame so well, so that if at least you feel guilty when you're smoking, it might encourage people to give up the habit or not even to take it up. So
we think it's a step in the right direction again.
Probably, yeah.
So the government seems to be doing all right at the moment. A step in the right direction for bullying, a step in the right direction for smoking.
Yeah, not too bad. At least they haven't had any bridges collapse, which is what has happened in China after a fireworks truck exploded on a bridge, collapsing a section of the road. Several vehicles were thrown into the air after the blast. Fireworks were intended for use in the Chinese Lunar New Year, which is on the 9th of February. 26 people are reported as killed, although the state media has reported that only 11 people have been injured. And just as a further note, 6 major bridges have collapsed in China since July 2011.
Not a particularly fantastic story coming out there, potentially showing some form of possible shoddy workmanship, perhaps, with these bridge collapses. You wouldn't expect that amount to have collapsed in such a short period of time. Yeah,
the Chinese government have laid out hundreds of miles of highway road in the past few years in their expansion of their road network, and it has seemed to be that some of the construction was substandard.
A few corners cut on that one. Yeah, a very tragic time, and obviously being such a large celebration for China and the Chinese people, this is obviously the last type of tragedy that they would have wanted associated with it.
Yeah, absolutely. We're moving on to another tragedy, which has just taken place in Mexico, where there was an explosion at a gas plant. 32 people are dead and over 100 injured at the Pemex oil plant, which is in Mexico City. This follows on from another explosion last September where 30 people died. The cause of the explosion is unknown at the moment, but it's expected that it's to be something to do with electrical malfunctions or some sort of electrical error.
So again, some form of, potential possible human error, or do you think it's a mechanical fault?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's probably somebody was cutting corners again, because the second explosion, explode me once, shame on you, explode me twice. Well,
yeah, absolutely. I suppose it's a difficult situation all around to see these kind of tragedies coming out. It does.
You'd have to wonder how much of this is the responsibility of the government, which should have put in place safety measures after the first explosion.
Absolutely, exactly. You wonder how the power of, let's say, the companies operating in these regions have over the government, whether or not they can get away with corners being cut because there is some form of reciprocal agreement with the government in these countries. Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting one. A new EU report has come out today saying that Ireland is one of the biggest cocaine users in Europe. The country ranked particularly high, no pun intended. It goes on for the increased amount of seizures by the Garda recently. Large quantities of cocaine have been found in the country. Also in the report, it appears that cannabis production in Ireland is also heavily on the increase, with Chinese nationals being numbered amongst the main perpetrators. Whether or not this will spark the government to actually clamp down on these things, or potentially push for looking at legalization or legislation, is interesting. It's going to go that way. Yeah,
me myself, I'd be personally in favour of Portugal's legalisation of all drugs of personal use. Let them go and get the distributors of the illegal drugs, if you want to go that way, because at the moment it seems like people are using it. Why shouldn't society at least benefit from the fact that they're using it? And I think that the popularity of cocaine is kind of the unacknowledged part of this story.
Absolutely. It's the sort of, it was described as in the report as the champagne of drugs, and it was obviously the link to the sort of rich and famous out there, seeing as a party drug, that kind of thing, seen as desirable.
Exactly.
And I think that may have sparked the sort of large increase of, in the consumption in this country. Whether or not we will now see let's say a tougher crackdown, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that a lot of famous people in Ireland are using cocaine, and we kind of need to acknowledge that point as well. I don't know how we're going to...
I think probably one step that I would like to see, that if they're not going to go down the route of legalising it for everyone, I would like to see, or prefer to see, those people, the high-profile cases who do get convicted of using drugs such as cocaine, actually get the exact same sentence as if it was Joe Bloggs off the street.
Exactly what I was trying to say. Thank you for saying it for me.
That's okay, but the time has come really when, why should a celebrity get a completely different sentence to you or I? It gives out completely the wrong message, and it essentially glamorizes the drug for other people, saying you can get away with it because they can as well.
Preach it, brother.
Preach it, I will. Moving on to a particularly disturbing story coming out of South Africa now. A 13-year-old schoolgirl has been married to a 57-year-old witch doctor in the country who treated her for epilepsy. Her parents couldn't afford the traditional epilepsy treatment, so they took her to a witch doctor. He told her that it was the child's ancestors that were causing the epileptic fits, and that she needed closer monitoring. This closer monitoring turned out to be a marriage proposal from the witch doctor himself. He paid the family a dowry which amounted to around €400 for the child. Villagers then told the police in South Africa, who promptly arrested the witch doctor for statutory rape. However, he was released the next day, as the court said that the family had consented to the marriage and therefore they had no case. It's an interesting one and a pretty horrible thing, because essentially this man has purchased what is, could be seen as a sex slave for €400.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea that you treat something like chattel, a piece of property to be traded for money is absolutely heinous. Not only that, but a 13-year-old girl.
A 13-year-old girl. They actually, the witch doctor himself did comment on the proceedings, saying that he hadn't forced the girl to do anything, but that it was an agreement between himself and her family. But the girl's human rights, her ideas, her acknowledgement were never taken into account in any way. And the interesting thing here that I found was that, according to South African law, the Minister of Home Affairs needs to grant special permission if a girl under the age of 15 wants to be married. Now, because this chap's got off from the court, you would presume that either that hasn't been done or that it has been somehow ignored. So there's a legal issue here that either needs to be looked at again, or perhaps potentially the chap needs to go back into court on this one.
I'm surprised that the state hasn't intervened simply to protect the child. Like, you would have thought that this, yeah, exactly. You would have thought that this was some sort of negligence on the part of the parents that they allowed this to happen. But
well, it's an interesting one there, because you can kind of see the parents' side of this, that they are incredibly poor, that they couldn't afford to go to a normal hospital, for instance, for this treatment, that there is a sort of a very ingrained traditional society in parts of South Africa where taking people to witch doctors, taking people to these things is a perfectly normal thing. But obviously this came through, and the parents went on record and said that they did this and that they were comfortable with it because they felt it was for the girl's best interest in terms of her health. But the thoughts of what she may be then forced to do in the marriage never came up, weren't discussed. I would hope that the South African government would now look again at this case. That would be my hope.
Yeah, and just in case people think that this is sort of hilarious because it's a witch doctor over in South Africa, we have to remember that there are plenty of native-born scams in Ireland, such as the House of Prayer, things like that, these sort of organisations that are willing to prey on people who are in need and desperate, in effect. Absolutely.
It's preying on the most vulnerable in society, exactly. And a practice that should hopefully stop. But to move on to something slightly lighter, we have a story coming out of Germany today. The Bolson Biscuit Company in Hanover has had its giant golden Leibniz biscuit emblem, try saying that a few times, stolen by a man dressed as the Cookie Monster. Yes, the sign has hung over their offices since 1913. It's now turned up in a picture along with a ransom note by the Cookie Monster, demanding that the company give free boxes of cookies to local children's hospitals and a donation of around €1,000 to an animal charity. The company, Bolson Biscuits, has agreed to provide 52,000 boxes of their cookies to these charities on return of the giant cookie itself. They've claimed it's not a PR stunt. I'm not 100% sure I believe them.
That is a rather delicious and intricate story. I have to admit, I admire the guy that he went through. You can see the notice letter that he sent, and he used cutouts of all different newspapers.
It's a classic ransom note, shall we say, and it's a fantastic picture of him holding this 20-kilogram, I may add, giant golden biscuit dressed as the Cookie Monster. So it's quite a feat there. Let's hope that the biscuit itself is returned and that the children's hospitals get what they deserve out of this. Alan, I believe you have one final story for us.
Absolutely. There's been a spate of badger tickling incidences around the country. Rather distressing news for those who are hoping that this badger treatment would finally end.
Yeah, it's something that has been on the rise, I believe, with the youth groups spreading from the UK over to Ireland. They sort of go out in the dead of night to find badgers, to obviously, sort of planking came before, extreme ironing, now this is something else.
It seems like this is a sort of morphing from badger baiting into badger tickling, and it seems like we're not quite sure how this developed. It seems like it's become very popular amongst young people.
Obviously, the environment agencies in the countries have obviously said that this is incredibly distressing for the animals themselves, that obviously badgers do carry TB, so there are inherent health risks involved in this activity, but it doesn't seem to have dampened people's spirits for badger tickling.
Yeah, let's hope that the badgers can, well, laugh their way through this terrifying incident.
Absolutely. There's going to be a fantastic live show coming up tonight at 8 o'clock live. Please check that out. But this has been the news live at 7 on fecktv.com. Thank you very much for watching. Good night.